All right, what's up, guys? Happy Friday. Chuck and Nick here to bring you the goods. We have a pretty decent DFS slate. Nick, any early thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, for a 10 gamer, we were talking a little bit earlier, not much value yet. So I wouldn't mind a couple late breaking pieces of news to maybe open things up. I think as things stand, we're probably going to have to stay pretty balanced tonight on both sides.
Yeah, it's kind of gross. I was telling Nick that my current top DK build has Gary Harris in it, so it's going to be a fun one. I think Jalen Suggs is questionable, so
Yeah.
maybe that turns out okay. Maybe he gets a few more minutes, but it's a super thin play, so we'll have to see. We did just get a couple pieces of news right now. OG Anunoby is out, and Gary Trent will play. So that probably, I don't know that it affects much. It takes away from, I guess, if you're getting to Malachi Flynn a little bit,
Yeah.
and it's probably a little good for Pascal and Scotty Barnes. And then the Celtics all got ruled in. We know they're playing. Bradley Beal's out for like 3 weeks because of back tightness. That's kind of insane to me. They can say 3 weeks like so definitively because of back tightness.
Right. Yeah, I have to think that has some sort of correlation to the holiday schedule. Like I know the Christmas games are pretty much 3 weeks, 4 weeks away, so maybe they're like, we'll get them back for that national game. I don't know, but it's weird. It seems like they're just being careful at this point.
Right, and that's making Eric Gordon pop a little bit on DraftKings. Some other
Mhm.
injury news: Quentin Grimes was ruled out. RJ Barrett's a game time decision. They did price up Josh Hart and quickly a little bit, but I think they're still going to be pretty decent spots, assuming RJ Barrett ends up getting ruled out. Marjon Beauchamp turned his ankle in the last game. He's ruled out. Giannis is ruled in. And then Daniel Tice signed with the Clippers. He is expected to be available today. We don't know if he's going to be in the rotation, how it's going to affect the rotation. If he's available to play, I imagine he gets a few minutes. They're going up against Houston. It doesn't seem like Ty Lue loves Zubac right now, which I don't understand. They didn't even run him against Jokic to close the game, and they see Sengun tonight. So I'm not sure
Yeah.
what to think about that. And we know Russell Westbrook has requested to come off the bench. Terrence Mann is starting tonight. So the model really likes Paul George. I think Paul George and Kawhi Leonard and James Harden. Like what we were saying, watch it be a James Harden game when we're more interested in Paul George and Kawhi. So
Yeah.
it's going to be fun. Hopefully, we get some later news that helps us. I don't know. That helps us make the slate a little bit easier. So,
Yeah.
any other injury news?
Oubre's out because of that car accident or whatever happened there in Philly. So we could look to Melton and Tobias Harris. They're not exactly cheap, but I think they're reasonably priced compared to some of the other stuff we're dealing with. There was one other piece, the opposite of injury news. The Hornets are getting Miles Bridges back tonight, for better or worse for that franchise, but he's probably going to cut into usage for some of those starters, one would have to imagine. So the opposite of what we're looking for. Another piece going into the rotation for Charlotte.
Right. Gordon Hayward is ruled in. The only piece of Charlotte I was really interested in to begin with was LaMelo Ball on
Mhm.
DraftKings and on FanDuel too, but I really want to play Jokic tonight, so it's kind of hard to fit him in.
I'm with you.
Um, we had one other piece of news. It'll come up while we're going through the slate, but let's take a look at the model. Top of the model today, of course, it's Nikola Jokic, far and away the number one play. Embiid, Giannis, Demantis all look good. Jason Tatum, AD, who's still at low ownership. He had a bad game last time. His price is still good on DraftKings. I'm still going to get there. And then
Mhm.
my play, LaMelo Ball, 3% owned on DraftKings at 10-2. It's kind of expensive. I don't mind point guards against Milwaukee, though. I'm not sure if the data is adjusted for Damian Lillard being the uh, I guess, primary defender of the point guards versus Drew Holiday. And
Mhm.
then we have a bunch, like, everyone's under 10% owned near the top of this list. I have a feeling the field is going to get to Jokic. I feel like he could come in a little bit higher than projected, but who else stands out from the top of the model?
I mean, not at the very top, but I do like Durant and Booker here against Utah. Definitely a favorable matchup. Beal, obviously, coming out of that starting lineup is going to create opportunity for the two of them. And KD's price is down. He's sub 10K on both sites now. Kind of priced as if Beal's still in the lineup. So you're getting a little bit of value on a high upside play there. Booker, same situation. I mean, he's been in and out, but whenever he plays, he seems to play his full run of minutes, consistently hitting around 50 fantasy points. So those are two that definitely stand out to me in a good matchup. You already brought up Tatum, who I like. But yeah, I mean, I had my eye on Cleveland. I guess Mitchell's questionable. If he were to be out, I would get to a lot of Garland. And if the opposite rings true, then we get to a lot of Mitchell. But yeah, I love Jokic. I'm right there with you. He was the first guy I put into my lineups over on FanDuel. Really going to want to try to get to him tonight. But after that, I do like those two pieces from the Suns.
Yeah, and speaking of Cleveland, so Karis LeVert, last year he was super frustrating to play when he was chalk, and he's definitely priced up now, 6,900 and 6,500 at no ownership. But um, like I've watched a couple Cleveland games, and he looks really, really good. And they're playing
Yeah,
massive minutes, and so he's basically getting starter minutes anyway. And so if one of those two, Donovan Mitchell or Garland, is ruled out, I really don't mind getting Karis LeVert even at this price, since he's coming in so low owned. And to a lesser,
yeah,
Max Strus also, he'll be in the starting lineup. He plays the whole game, and they look a lot better with Max Strus out there. Super weird to see, but it's a spot that I do not mind getting to, assuming one of those guys is ruled out. And then Paul George and Kawhi, really like them tonight with Russell Westbrook off the bench. I think their prices are slightly inappropriate. If we knew that earlier, maybe they deserve to be priced a couple $100 higher on both sites. I think they're
mhm.
both good spots coming in with no ownership. And then we have an early question in the chat: is Julius Randle a good play? So if Julius Randle was still around that 8K, 8.2K price, I have a feeling that he would be the chalk today. But because they priced him up to 8,800 on both sites, I don't think he's a bad play, but I'm not as excited to get to him as I was when he was 8K. How interested
Yeah.
are we in Randall tonight?
Yeah, I feel pretty much the same. He helped me climb a leaderboard 2 nights ago, but yeah, he was priced at 8,200. I don't mind the matchup. We did get news that Grimes is out, which is beneficial. If Barrett's out as well, we have seen an uptick in Randall's fantasy point per minute rate with Barrett out of there. So he's fine, and I think a lot of people are going to try to avoid those first two games tonight, waiting for news to break in the rest, the other eight. So if you kind of avoid those two games, I think that's going to drive down ownership a little bit. So I do like Randall. You are paying up a bit to be contrarian, but I do love the upside. I mean, they're playing the Wizards. What better front court to really go off against? And after struggling for a couple weeks, it does seem like Randall's finally starting to find his legs again. So I don't mind him here.
Yeah, and the Wizards is probably the best matchup for every team in the NBA this year. But the problem is they're getting blown out, and like Julius Randle, if they're up by 25 in the fourth quarter, we know Tibbs likes to run his guys, but if he loses 5 minutes to blowout run him and Brunson, it's kind of tragic. So
Yeah.
just something to keep in mind. And then the other early game, I already mentioned Charlotte and Milwaukee. So Giannis, where's Giannis on the model? He's third on the model. He's pulling 4% ownership. He had a monster game without Dame. I know he sat the last game, but the previous game, Giannis finally looked like Giannis again. And
Mhm.
so, are we interested in Giannis and Dame tonight?
I mean, if you're playing a bunch of lineups, I do think there's merit to getting there just because they're lower owned than they probably should be given their upside. But I'm playing a handful of single entries, like I think 3 to 5 on FanDuel, 2 or 3 over on DK. I don't think I'm going to get there. Again, I'm prioritizing Jokic. He's more popular, but the gap isn't necessarily wide enough for me to want to make that pivot aggressively. But yeah, it's an amazing matchup. If Giannis goes for 30, 15, 10, I'm not going to be surprised here at all. It's just not something you can necessarily bank on with Dame in the lineup. Obviously, the usage has been cut down a little bit with Dame on the floor there. So, great matchup. Love the upside, like the ownership. But it's hard to pay up for more than one guy tonight, and it's really tough for me to get away from Joker right now.
Same. Yeah, I'm all about Jokic tonight. And then regarding Dame, like when a guy like Damian Lillard doesn't show up on like the top of the model, like I have to scroll down. He's the first person when I scroll down, but it's not really a good sign when he's kind of a high price on DraftKings, and his price on
Mhm.
FanDuel's okay. He's pulling 10% ownership there. We do have a comment in the chat. I love Houston LAC stack tonight. Van Vliet, Smith Jr. and running Zubac on LAC. So I was thinking about this earlier, and I really like centers against the Clippers right now. But a big problem is like Ty Lue was not willing to run Zubac against Jokic in the fourth quarter last game, which just blows my mind. They had
Yeah.
like Kawhi Leonard or PJ Tucker guarding Jokic. Zubac came back in for like, I don't know, the last minute or something for a rebounding opportunity, maybe. But that's what scares me about Zubac. I'm still going to like him. Maybe it's different with Russ coming off the bench, but that's one reason I'm not interested in Zubac tonight. I am very interested in Alper and Sengun, though. And I already mentioned PG and Kawhi, I think are awesome plays. And then oh, go ahead.
No, yeah, I was just gonna say, Russ moving to the bench could actually help his upside too. I think his price came down a little bit. But yeah, obviously not sharing the floor with PG and Kawhi should help him return to the ceiling that we were seeing from him earlier in the year before Harden got there. We saw at times last year him coming off the bench, really big games. So where he's priced reasonably, I don't mind Russ as a run back. I'm with you. I'm a little bit concerned about what Ty Lue thinks of Zubac right now. So I don't know that he's the first guy I'd be running back with. I'd rather go to a PG, maybe Russ off the bench.
Yeah, Russ at 6,500 on DraftKings at 1% ownership. Now, we only have him projected for 25.7 minutes. I would actually be extremely surprised if he only saw 26 minutes tonight. Even coming off the bench, I still expect Russell Westbrook to play 30 minutes. And if he plays 30 minutes at 1% at 6,500 on DraftKings, I think that's a fine GPP play. Odd Jacks in the chat. Am I the only one who's not high on sack because they're going to blow out the Spurs and get pulled midway through the third quarter? So it's, what is it, a 9-point spread, I believe. And,
Eight
you
and a
know,
half. Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
maybe.
yeah, 8.5 is not really like, yes, it's definitely possible that Sacramento blows out the Spurs. We have it as an 8-point spread on the model right now, but we don't predict blowouts. And if it doesn't end up blowing out, I think there's a lot of really good plays on both sites. Main thing is the number one owned guy on DraftKings today is Malachi Branham. So that's how you know it's a disgusting slate.
Right. And,
Uh,
and one more thing on the Kings thing, like if they do blow them out too, you got to figure in three quarters, the big plays like Fox, Sabonis, they're probably going to be pushing value if they're going to get pulled and they're up by 20 points. Like the reason a team's blowing another team out is because their stars are usually going off. So it kind of it's like a check and balance like within itself. Like obviously you want to avoid those situations where you can, especially on a large slate. But if the Kings are going off on the road in San Antonio, it's pretty safe to expect that Fox and or Sabonis are putting up really nice scores, even with limited minutes.
Yeah, if that's the game script you're building for, then we would still be interested in the team doing the blowing out because
Right.
like Fox and Sabonis are probably the reason why it's a blowout. And so we're not as concerned about them. Like the Spurs, yeah, we're a little more concerned. And then I want to mention Kevin Werder. This
Mm.
guy put up 50 fantasy points last game. He's been going off, hitting threes, getting rebounds, and he's pulling a lot of ownership tonight, even at this elevated price. It's not a spot I'm interested in. Are you getting there, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I want to put him and Monk in the same bucket here. They're both scoring
Yep.
dependent. They're both streaky, and they're both on fire right now. So I could see mixing them in. But I think at their ownerships compared to what we're seeing at guard and small forward on the rest of the slate, they're really not priorities for me. And it's not so much that I don't think they can duplicate what they've been doing. It's just at high ownership on a slate where ownership's pretty flat across the board. I don't know that those are stands I'm really willing to take. Again, two scoring dependent guys. Obviously, the upside's there, but the prices have come up on Herder. I think Monk's price went down on DK, which makes him a little more interesting to me. But I feel the same about both of them. High ceiling, low floor, boom bust. Probably a little bit over owned, relatively speaking.
Yeah, like from an absolute point of view, I don't hate them. With Kevin Werder, a big thing was the risk of him getting benched, kind of similar to Benedict Mathurin. It's like if he plays 30 plus minutes, he's good play. If he only gets 25, then he's probably not. But at these
Mhm.
ownerships, I think I'm just full fading Werder tonight. Maybe I'll get there a little bit on FanDuel since he helps with the lineup construction a little bit. But I think it's too much ownership. It's more than he deserves. And Monk is okay. I mean, even if it's a blowout, Monk is off the bench. He's not going to get the full blowout run, so that's a risk with
Right.
Monk. He could lose that last rotation, but I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
They're okay GPP
they're
plays.
both upside plays. Yeah, I'd say if the rest of your lineup's relatively low owned, then I'd feel more comfortable playing guys like that. But if you're eating some chalk at other positions, um, I don't know. I think you're fine to get away from them. There's a lot of plays in that 5 to 6K range that are really strong on the slate.
So let's go ahead and move into the guards. I'm not going to change the slide for risk of the audio cutting out
You're
again.
good. You're
So
good.
we are on guards, and it's pretty tight at the top. LaMelo, Trae Young, Donovan Mitchell, Devin Booker. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Trae Young is shooting 35% from the field on the season, which is awful. I think he had 17 assists in the last game. But these guys, I don't know. I think Trae Young's a fine play. I mean, kind of like some of the other guys we talk about. I mean, he's going to have a blow up game eventually. I mean, and he's been pretty consistently at this 45 plus fantasy point range.
Yeah, and his price doesn't move. And when you're comparing him to guys like Mitchell and Ball, who are both more expensive, even Booker, you're getting a bit of a discount off the other guys that are really scoring well in OF Index. So I do like Trey there. He's cheaper than the other top three or four. I mean, then you have Paul George. Obviously, we like Paul George, but there's some usage questions there with Harden and Kawhi on the floor. Trey, even with DeJounte Murray, has been seeing increase usage, and maybe there's some narrative there. He just had a baby. Maybe he's getting some extra dad strength in these next couple of weeks.
Yeah, man, get that Fred Van Vliet going. This dude just
Yeah,
drops 50 points after having a baby every time.
it could happen.
Tyrese Maxey has been. He was going off to start the season. I think he's still ranked number 4 by Hoops Hype's global rating, fourth best
Wow.
player overall in the NBA. The top 3 are Giannis, Luka, and Jokic. So it's just kind of insane. Could he keep it up? Probably not. I mean, he kind of had a couple down games, which is insane to say down games for Tyrese Maxey. He still had
Right.
very good games, but he's pulling no ownership. It's not a spot I mind. I think it's a great game situation against Atlanta. I mean, 6 for 15, 9 for 23, 20 for 32. Like 20 for 32 is absolutely insane. But that he has a potential to put up 20 plus shots. We're not really looking for much in terms of peripherals with Tyrese Maxey. Like he's done it a few times, but we'll have to see if he can keep going. I don't think he's a terrible GPP play. At the lower ownership, I don't mind taking some shots there against Atlanta.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's some sticker shock on that price. Paying over 9K for Maxi with Embiid in the lineup doesn't feel great, but that's exactly why you're going to get him low owned. I agree. I like the game environment. Yeah, fine GPP play. Probably not the first guard I'd be rushing to get to, but again, everyone else feels the same way, so that's why you're going to get him at lower ownership.
And it is a pretty high total, 236.5. And then
Mhm.
we mentioned Charlotte Milwaukee. That total is 241. And I know it's the first game. I know we're waiting for some spots to open up from the later games, but there could be someone that we're interested in that game. For me, I think LaMelo is the most interesting. But I don't know. We'll have to see if we get any news before lock.
Right.
Then the other high total game, 237.5, Utah Phoenix. We already mentioned Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. I think they're both awesome plays, even at Devin Booker's elevated price tag. Utah, Jordan Clarkson has been very aggressive. He's been very inefficient, but they're letting him do what he wants to do. Projected for 34 minutes. His ownership is in check. Him and Laurie, I think, are pretty good spots. And then just jumping around to value, where's Colin Sexton? Colin Sexton's going to be pretty popular today. Model doesn't think so, though. Model does
Hmm.
not like Colin Sexton, so that's something to pay attention to.
Yeah, how many minutes are we projecting him for? Because, I mean, he hadn't been playing many, but he did get to 28 last time. I don't know if that's an outlier or what. But yeah, I mean, the thing with Sexton, it really depends on the minutes, and he's coming off the bench, so he's one of the tougher guys to project in terms of minutes consistently. I think we have
Yeah,
him at 20 minutes, which seems low, but I don't know.
and even that 20 minutes is higher than he saw in the previous 4 games. So he did see 28, kind of a blowout against Portland. He was playing well, so maybe he gets a longer leash when he's playing well. I still think
Hmm.
that the point guard rotation in Utah is a little bit muddy. They have THT, they have the rookie Keontae George, Colin Sexton, and then Jordan Clarkson is basically the shooting guard anyway. But I think that his ownership is a little bit higher than it should be just based on him playing 28 minutes last game. Could he play 28 minutes again? Of course, he just did it in the previous game. But I think, yeah, that, like Nick said, that's pretty much an outlier. At 27%, 4,100, he does allow us to do some things with our lineup. But
Hmm.
is this a late game? Yeah, it's one of the late games. So if he's in your lineup, then you can probably swap. You should be able to swap if any other value opens up. So I don't mind starting my builds or starting my lineups, having him in my lineups at lock. Since if something opens up, it shouldn't be too tough to swap.
Right. And yeah, and I mean, I don't mind George either, especially on FanDuel where he's below 5K, I think. Not quite the same ceiling as Sexton, but I think his minutes are more secure right now.
Yeah, Keontae George has been pretty good recently. I think he had a pretty good assist game, and it's
He had
just
a couple, yeah.
yeah, I mean, 11 assists, 9 assists, 7 assists, playing 26 to 31 minutes. He lost a couple minutes to Colin Sexton in the last game, but he's been pretty good. We haven't seen that ceiling from him yet, but yet. So maybe he can put up a couple more points, maybe grab an extra stock or two with those 10 assists that looks
Mhm.
like he's heading towards. Um, and in terms of guards, any other mid-range guards that we want to discuss?
Let's see here. I do like Brunson's price on both sides, really. I mean, especially if Barrett's out, you're getting him at 8,300 on DK, 8K over on FanDuel. Kind of inconsistent to start the year, but a little bit of extra usage for him could be huge. Can kind of boost him up to the tier with the higher price guards in the 9K range. You're getting that nice discount on a slate where we don't have much value. So Jalen Brunson's one that stands out to me. I don't see him in the model right now. I kind of like Skylar Mays maybe more than I should. With Brogdon and Simons out, he's been really effective. This is a player I liked coming out of college. Didn't know if he'd get much opportunity, but he has been lately, and he's kind of inconsistent, pretty scoring reliant. But I think you can get him at low ownership, and he's a player in the late games that if you do need room to pivot, he's a little bit overpriced, so you could maybe pivot onto something else. Good player to use for 2v2 swaps. Someone I'll probably have in my lineup that may not be in my lineup by the time the slate is said and done, but I do like him as kind of a mid-range building block at guard, just to kind of create some wiggle room. But yeah, that's a little bit risky though. I don't want to put too many people on the Skylar Mays against the Lakers. I do think it's a decent matchup. I don't mind the game environment, but yeah, the Blazers aren't great. But he should be on the floor even if they start to get blown out. He's a young player. I think they want to see what they have with him.
Yeah, Nick mentioned he's slightly overpriced, 6,700, 6,900. The thing is, if he was 6K, he would be the chalk today. I mean, he's already
Right.
projected for 10 and 14% these prices. I think he's a fine play. And then Shaden Sharp, I was really hoping his ownership was going to come in a little bit lower, but I think he's a pretty good GPP play too.
Yeah.
Lakers aren't a tough matchup. Total's 226, middling total.
Yeah.
Lakers are 8.5 point favorites, but Shaden Sharp, I mean, if the game stays close, it's probably because Shaden Sharp's doing stuff, and we'll get to Jeremy Grant when we get to the forwards.
Yeah. I got one more kind of mid-range guard that I don't think many are going to be on. Dyson Daniels has been starting for the Pels, and he's not the most exciting play, but he kind of feels like a Mike Conley in that you're going to get 25 to 35 fantasy points out of him every night that he's starting. And I don't know, on a slate lacking value, I look for plays like that I know aren't going to kill me, may make it tough for me to get to the top of a leaderboard. But if I get 30, 35 points out of Daniels here, I'm going to feel pretty good about it. And if I'm loading up on Jokic, I also really like Porter and Gordon in that game. I think he makes sense as a run back where Ingram's been a bit disappointing. Zion's pretty pricey, and it's tough to trust the other pieces from New Orleans. So if Daniels is going to continue to start over Hawkins, I like him a lot at his price, and I feel like it's kind of sneaky.
Yeah, I like that too. 5K, 8 and 4%. These are the types of plays I like to get to when no one else is. And then
Mhm.
Jordan Hawkins, we've seen him be mega chalk,
Yeah,
and he wasn't that much cheaper than he is now, but he's coming in at 1 and 2%. Like, granted, we have a larger sample size with seeing his usage, and Ingram and Zion are in tonight. But Jordan Hawkins not a terrible GPP play either. I mean, he put up pretty good score last game in 33 minutes. Took 17 shots, which is something that
yeah,
we love to see. Hit 5 threes, which is awesome for DraftKings. And so he's an okay GPP play. I think so. It is kind of weird to me that it's only a 5 point spread against the Nuggets, who are probably the best team in the NBA, if not the Celtics. Like, it
yeah.
seems tight. Like, how do the Pelicans keep this close? Dyson Daniels, Brandon Ingram, Jordan Hawkins. I'm not in on Zion right now, so that's going to be a tough one for me. But my favorite play from New Orleans, we'll get into him a little more in the forwards, but it's Herb Jones. He's showing up really high in the value at 1% owned.
Yeah, he's coming off a huge game. I like Herb Jones. Pretty inconsistent in my opinion, but at
Yeah.
his price, I mean, he's too cheap for the ceiling, which is exactly what you're looking for in tournaments. And as for this game staying close, I mean, I think one no Murray for the Nuggets, which obviously hurts them a little bit. And they are like unbeatable at home, and I think they had to travel down to New Orleans here, which is across the country. So we're probably getting that baked into the line a little bit. So yeah, I do think the Nuggets probably cover and probably win here, but I do think it's competitive enough going across the country to play on the road in New Orleans.
And then just looking at the top of value, Contavious Caldwell Pope finally came down in price on DraftKings. 8%, I think, is still a good ownership. 23% on FanDuel is also fine. I mean, DraftKings, he gets the extra half a point for threes. FanDuel, the extra point for steals and blocks.
Mhm.
23% sounds kind of high to get to KCP, but I still like it at 4,500. And then on DraftKings, I'll probably take some shots there at this price and ownership. I'd rather play him over Eric Gordon, certainly.
Yeah,
Eric Gordon, he can get hot. I mean, he has to come in and hit threes, but Devin Booker's here. His usage is going to be a little bit lower. We'll have to see if he's in the starting lineup tonight. But we have Eric Gordon projected for 30 minutes, which might kind of sound insane. But did you get Eric Gordon in your early runs?
I'm not getting there. Again, I'm only playing a handful of lineups tonight, but Yeah, I mean, at the price he's tempting, it's just tough for me to want to click on him. I already talked about how much I like KD and Booker. Like, I'm kind of banking on them having ceiling games tonight. And if that's happening, you're probably not getting enough usage for Gordon to get there as well. But again, this is me kind of building to a narrative. If Booker or KD are a little bit off shooting tonight, it could be Gordon who picks up the slack. And we even saw a game with Grayson Allen. I think even Beal was in one of those huge games Grayson Allen had where he had like 50 points, 26 real points, something like that. So both these guys are capable of massive ceilings at low ownership. That is appealing, but obviously it's tough to get excited about them if they're going to be on the floor with Durant and Booker.
Yeah, I mean, at the price, on an absolute point of view, I don't mind Eric Gordon, but when looking at, even like 14% isn't that high on a large slate for Eric
No.
Gordon, though. It does seem a little like, we're banking on him to have a really good shooting tonight. I'd rather target other guys who are capable of doing that. I know Jordan Hawkins is a little more expensive, but I feel like that's a better GPP play at no ownership than Eric Gordon is at 14%. And
Yeah.
then we mentioned Malachi Branham, highest owned guy on DraftKings, 39%. The 3,900 price tag is great. Does he get blowout run if Sacramento blows him out? Maybe.
I
It's not
mean,
guaranteed.
maybe it's pop. Yeah, that's a good segue though. I did want to at least mention Jeremy Sochan with Vassell out of the lineup and Trey Jones. I've been trying to make Sochan a thing all year. I think a lot of people have. Really talented player. They moved him to point guard. With no Trey Jones, he's going to play even more minutes at point guard. He's been pretty inconsistent, but I do like the price on both sites. I think he's reasonably priced at 5,800 on DK, 6K over on FanDuel. You could play him at forward on FanDuel as well, at power forward, which is helpful in lineup construction. So he's a solid option to me as well. Even though he has been kind of disappointing so far, I think with no Jones or Vassell, that should at least boost his floor and ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, Sochan's a guy we've been excited about all season. DraftKings took
Right.
away his multi-position eligibility, and there was a quote that he does not like playing point guard. I mean, it's an adjustment
Yeah.
period. Once he
Yeah.
becomes one of the best point guards in the NBA, I'm sure he'll like it a little bit more. But right now, he is still adjusting to it. I believe Keldon Johnson is expected to play tonight. I
Hmm.
think this actually helps Sochan. I don't think it takes away from him, even if he has slightly lower usage. Just having
Yeah.
a player of Keldon Johnson's caliber on the court is very helpful to young point guards.
Absolutely.
That's a good call. And then Doug McDermott, 4%, 3,300. Like, we don't have much value. This is a deep value play, but it is a player capable of coming in and hitting a few threes and getting there. And then Devontae Graham, since Trey Jones is out, we did see Devontae Graham get a few minutes last game. And we've seen him have a couple blow up games last season. 17 minutes. He took 3 shots, had 7 assists in the previous game, which 3 shots is concerning, but 7 assists and 17 minutes sounds good. 3,400. If you're building 20 max or 150 max, I don't mind mixing in Devontae Graham either.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's really tough to find value sub 4K, especially on DK.
And D'Anthony Melton, I think, is the other popular one, 5,600 on both sites. He had a really good game last time. And with the starting lineup being a little bit different, I think him and Tobias Harris are kind of chalky tonight.
Mhm.
But D'Anthony Melton, I mean, he hasn't been bad. He's getting 30 plus minutes every game, basically.
Yep.
He will now, anyway, with Kelly Oubre being out. I think he's okay. I initially wasn't into it, but looking at the slate a little bit closer, I think he's fine.
Yeah, yeah, I like Melton. I like Harris. I just think with no Ubre there, that's boosting them a bit, and the prices didn't really adjust for it. So, yeah, and I don't think he's a huge ceiling sharing the floor with Maxi and Embiid, but I do think he's kind of similar to a Dyson Daniels in that you're probably going to get 30 fantasy points out of him, which you can feel pretty good about.
And then I noticed Gary Trent is showing up decently high on the DK value. He's ruled in, and I'm kind of looking at him. His price is similar to Eric Gordon, and
Hmm.
at a fraction of the ownership, especially on DraftKings, I feel like I'd rather play Gary Trent than Eric Gordon. Now, Gary Trent is probably going to fail us more often than Eric Gordon, but the times
Yeah,
that he goes off, it's going to be tournament winning. And
yeah.
so,
And no OG tonight should help Trent as
mhm,
well. I guess the one fear is that this is his first game back from injury. I don't know if
mhm.
there's any sort of limitations on him. I'd imagine there wouldn't be, knowing how cautious they are with injuries there. It's where they're running guys out if they can't play their full rotation. So I think Trent's a good play. That's not a bad call at all.
Yeah, projected for 27 minutes. If he gets 27 minutes, I'm fine taking the chance on him. And 4,400 on FanDuel is not bad either.
No, not at
Just make
all.
sure there's no one else. Killian Hayes, he was chalk a couple times. It's a little bit different now with guys coming back. Alec Burks is back mainly, but 1%.
Ivy back too, yeah.
Yeah, and Ivy. And Ivy finally had a good game, one. So we'll see if that continues. Norm Powell off the bench for the Clippers at 4K. Is it better or worse for Norm Powell that Russell Westbrook's going to be running next to him a lot now?
It's tough to say because I think it's okay when it's just Russ, but I would have to see how the entire like rotations are staggered. Like how many of those minutes with Russ are also with Paul George? How many of those minutes with Russ are also with Kawhi? Are they staggering George and Kawhi? Like there's a lot of questions I think we're going to get answered tonight. And knowing Ty Lue, it may take a week or two for these rotations to settle. My initial thought is it's pretty neutral.
Okay.
Still think he's risky. Still think he's cheap with upside though, so you could probably get there in tournaments and feel okay about it. Probably still plays 25 to 30 minutes, so he's okay. But yeah, I don't know that I'm comfortable making a call on his usage until we see how these rotations shake out.
Yeah, Norm Powell 4K at 4%. I think this guy ended up in some of my early DraftKings lines, but he's in the last game. So, kind of like the other guys that we talked about, it's not too tough to swap them out if other value arises. And then we have a question in chat from Jose Morales. Thanks for showing up every day. Appreciate you. Who would we run with Jokic? So, we mentioned Dyson Daniels. I think Brandon Ingram's probably okay. But the top of value on New Orleans, anyway, is Herb Jones, yeah, at 1% now. This is a risky play, like Nick mentioned. I mean, he could completely bust or he could break the slate. He single-handedly beat the Mavericks last time, just ripping the ball from Luka every time. So that was really cool to see. Not a
Yeah,
guarantee he does it again, but yeah, at 1% owned, I think him and Dyson Daniels are my two favorite plays from New Orleans. That's probably who I'm going to try to run it back with in my Jokic lineups.
yeah, that makes sense. I really like Daniels. I like the Herb call. Ingram, I mean, last year whenever CJ was out, we load up on him, but we haven't really seen that ceiling out of him consistently yet, and they haven't discounted him in spite of the kind of shaky results. He had a really nice game last time out. I think he's rounding a corner. So if you can afford Ingram with Jokic and you like the rest of your value, I feel pretty good about that as a run back, but it is going to be tough to fit both and still be comfortable at your other positions on this slate unless we get more to open up.
So if we're looking at Ingram's last game, yeah, he finally had a 50 fantasy point game, played 36 minutes, but he got the blowout run. They were up by like 20 or 25 in the fourth quarter, and he stayed on the court until almost the last minute, which maybe they're trying to get him going. I guess it
Yeah,
worked because
maybe.
he had a great game. But don't look at this 50 fantasy points like, oh, he played well. I mean, they blew out Dallas. They won by 21 points. So
Yeah.
just something to keep in mind. He got the blowout run, which he probably shouldn't be. But if they're, like I said, if they're trying to get him going, it could happen again, I guess. If they're
Absolutely.
losing, I'm not sure they keep him in the game though.
Right.
And then is Jordan Clarkson a safe play? I don't know if he's a safe play. He might seem safe since his usage has been sky high. He's been one of the most inefficient players in the NBA this season. But Utah's letting him do his thing. He's playing 30 plus minutes, 32 plus minutes every game. So I don't know if he's safe at 6,800, but I think he's a pretty good play regardless.
Yeah, he's somewhat scoring dependent, but he seems locked in right now. So I think he's pretty safe. And it's kind of a cop out of an answer, but yeah, I mean, I don't mind him. I think he's solid.
The thing that kills me about him is he's taking away shots from Laurie Markkinen, one of my favorite guys. He's supposed to be one of my favorite guys to target at this price, but Jordan
Yeah.
Clarkson's just taking all the usage.
Yeah, Laurie's been a floor guy. He hits like 38 to 40 every night and not
It's
much
just
more.
it's disappointing.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and look at the forwards. Just we already know top of the OF index: Giannis, Tatum, Durant, LeBron. Like people are going to overlook LeBron every night. That comment Darvin Ham made about 28 to 30 minutes was a complete lie because I don't even think he's. I think he's the only time he's actually played less than 30 minutes is when the Lakers blew out whoever the other night, and he didn't play the fourth quarter. But all these guys top. I mean, Laurie Markkinen's still showing up pretty high in the model at 86 and 8,400 at decent ownership. Kawhi and Paul George we mentioned. Brandon Ingram, Julius Randle. I think his price is a little bit high, but it's a really good matchup, and the total's pretty good over there too. Oh, 228. Actually, that's lower than I expected.
Yeah.
Aaron Gordon showing up great in OF Index. Finally, the model's coming around to him. Larger sample size from this season with Jamal Murray out. Predicted for
Yeah.
22% ownership, so the ownership is catching up. And then Tobias Harris, 30%. Uh, I think his price is probably too cheap on DraftKings. And so even though he's 30% owned, it's not a spot that I mind getting to. Great matchup against Atlanta. I mean, he's a top value play at 63, him and Aaron Gordon, followed by Herb Jones, and then Keldon Johnson. Like Keldon Johnson as a GPP shout too. So I think all these guys top of the model are looking pretty good.
Yep, absolutely. The big chalk at forward on FanDuel is going to be John Collins tonight. Only 5,300 over here for some reason. Strange. They lowered his price almost 1,000 after a couple good games. Really can't figure out why. He's projecting around 60% owned, but he's probably the first guy in for me. One of the easier pieces of chalk to just eat. Another really popular play on FanDuel is Jeremy Grant. Looks okay over on DK as well. Somewhat inconsistent, but we know he has a high ceiling with both Simons and Brogdon out of the lineup. So not as safe, I'd say, as Collins at his respective price. But I do like Grant. Those are two chalkier plays. One play I want to talk about with you for value is if Kevin Knox gets the start here for Detroit. Apparently, he wore the starter's jersey at shoot around today, whatever the hell that means. So he's projected to start. He's only 4K on DK, 4-1 on FanDuel, has forward eligibility at small forward and power forward. I don't know. On a slate with no value, I guess I got to take a look at his ownership. But I mean, if he starts, I think this is someone I'm pretty comfortable with, and there's not much in this range that I'm comfortable with. So
Yeah, we only have projected for 5 and 2% ownership at that 4K price on both sites. I don't think
21
this
minutes, yeah,
is. Yeah, I don't think this is a situation where, like, when Marvin Bagley's announcing the starting lineup, the whole field flocks to him. This is
hmm
Kevin Knox, the NBA. Whatever team he's been on has been trying to make him a thing since he came in the league, the Knicks.
yeah,
And he did see 29 minutes, 24 minutes in the last two games. He shot 5 for 8, 7 for 8. I mean, I think he took in this Atlanta game, I think he was, I don't know if they drew up the play for him, but he took the shot to try to tie it at the end, which just blows my mind. Like, you have six other players on this team that probably should have taken a shot over Kevin Knox. But if they thought he's playing well, he was open, sure. If he's starting, and his ownership will come up, but it's not going to be like a Marvin Bagley situation, I think he's fine.
right,
Yeah,
yeah.
9 point spread doesn't really matter.
Yeah, that's one I definitely have an eye on. And then Isaiah Stewart does have power forward eligibility on FanDuel as well. No Duren for the Pistons. Not the best matchup at all against Cleveland. Really a bad matchup, but for lack of a better word. But I do like Knox. I don't mind Stewart. If they're going to keep that game close, the front court's going to have to show out.
Yeah, and Stewart showing up pretty close to the top of the value model, so we like that as well. Jalen Johnson, he's losing some ownership. We've seen him be a very high usage player. This total is 236. I mean, if there's a game for Jalen Johnson to go back to his super ceiling games, then this is probably the one. I mean, he hasn't had bad games. He's not killing our lineups. You know, if he gives us 30 fantasy points, we're slightly disappointed at this price, but with the potential to put up 36 to 40, I mean, at the low ownership, it's a spot I don't mind getting to either.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think that makes sense.
RJ Barrett's still in here. He's a game time decision. I imagine Josh Hart is going to go up the model. If RJ Barrett's out, it's not going to be as high as he was before due to the price increasing, but I still think he's going to be a pretty good play. His minutes are going to be pretty secure. Denny Avdia has been popular. His minutes have been more secure. The last few games, we saw him lose minutes in the first few games. Not sure what's going on there, but 6K, it's probably the appropriate price for him. I don't mind him in GPPs. And then on FanDuel, yeah, John Collins is probably is. I mean, he 5,300 is a misprice.
Yeah, it's a
They
misprice. I don't
they
get it.
clicked the wrong number. He should be 6,300.
I think
So
that's what it is.
61%. Like, I don't see any reason to fade the John Collins chalk on FanDuel. I think in my early run, he was in like 96% of my FanDuel lineups. So
I like it. Yeah.
pretty good.
We did just get news that both Caruso and DeRozan are in for the Bulls. Don't know if we were expecting anything otherwise, but that kind of takes the value pieces from Chicago away. Can't feel as good about a Kobe White, Patrick Williams, or anything like that if you were getting there. But just wanted to bring that up because it just came up.
Yeah, Patrick Williams has been playing really well. He's been getting increased minutes, and the usage was there. Now his price came up a little bit. I don't think this is a bad price for him, even with those guys in at 0%
Mhm.
ownership. But this is like a 150 player. If you're playing the 20 maxes, maybe play him in one lineup. But he still does have that ceiling, even with DeRozan in. So
Yeah.
if he's playing well,
Yeah.
he'll get the minutes. There was one guy, Jose Alvarado is ruled out again. Pretty sure he's been out, so that's just
Mhm.
more confirmation that Dyson Daniels' minutes are pretty safe.
Yep. Exactly.
And then, is there anyone who's in the mid range for forwards that we're interested in?
I already talked about Grant. I guess Sharp falls in that category. Keldon Johnson, did we talk about him at all?
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
if there is a blowout there, he's probably the riskiest player. He'd be the first one off the floor. But if that game's competitive, it's going to probably be because of Keldon Johnson. I do like the price, 6,700 on both sides. This is a guy we've seen into the mid to high 7K range when he's playing well. Coming off a solid game, inconsistent, just in nature, I guess, with that Spurs offense. But he's someone I'm definitely considering here. We already talked about the Nuggets guys. Love both Porter and Gordon. I'll be heavy on both of them tonight. Um, but yeah, I do like Keldon. I do want to make sure I mix him in a little bit.
Yeah, my main DraftKings lineup right now does have Keldon, Aaron Gordon, and Herb Jones, three of the top four guys. If you want to mix in Tobias Harris instead of one of those guys, I think that's perfectly fine. I'm going with
Nice.
Herb Jones just for the that's my 1% owned leverage guy. Since rest of my lineup, well, Jokic isn't super chalk, but I think he'll come in like 20% owned, and then I also have Sengun in there, who I really like a lot.
Yeah.
And speaking of
One.
centers, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say one more thing. If Barrett's out, Josh Hart becomes pretty obvious as a forward play.
Yeah.
He is priced up, but with Grimes already out as well, I'd feel pretty comfortable getting to Hart.
Yeah, especially the 5,500 on FanDuel.
Hmm.
I think it's a pretty easy play. 5,900, at least we have to make some decisions on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, Josh Hart would be a really good play. Really like getting there. And then speaking of centers, so we mentioned we love Jokic. He's probably just going to be the top center play on every single slate that he plays in this season.
At
But
least with Murray out, yeah.
yeah, at least with Murray out. And then in the mid range, I really like. Oh, is my guy not showing up? Alperen Sengun. Apparently, the model disagrees a little bit. He's pulling some ownership, but I think it's a really good matchup against the Clippers.
Yeah, no, I don't mind it at all. I think we're just kind of conservative with his minutes in the model right now. I don't think he's quite at 30. I think that's the reason.
Mhm.
But we've seen him get over that mark a few times. And if he does, he's better than a fantasy point per minute producer. So he'd quickly jump a bunch of those guys in the model. So I'm with you on Sengun. Really like him as a tournament play. Obviously, they're not bringing in Daniel Tice to shoot the ball. They've been struggling with front court defense in LA. So that makes plenty of sense in my opinion. Mitchell Robinson is a boom bust option at center. It's just a matchup, really, more than anything. Centers against Washington have been pretty successful. Robinson, wide range of outcomes. There are games where he could just kind of disappears, but more often than not, he's pushing value. I don't think we have to worry about much foul trouble or anything in this matchup, knock on wood. But inconsistent. I think people look at his game logs and they say, probably don't want to go here. But then when you consider the matchup, you consider his upside and his price, especially on DK at 5,500, where you could play two centers. I think he makes some sense.
And I want to mention Joel Embiid. I feel like I've been overlooking him
Mm,
this season. It's a really good game against Atlanta, high total. It's a pivot off of Jokic, even though the
yeah.
ownership is similar. I'm pretty sure Jokic is going to come in higher owned. But I mean, I'd rather just pay the extra 1K and get to Jokic.
Yep.
The
No, yeah,
mo-
I mean, Embiid has the same upside as Jokic, whether we're going to admit it or not. It's true, and yeah, I think if there was a wider ownership gap there, I'd be talking about more. But yeah, I do prefer Jokic of the two, and I guess we have to bring up a Kongwu on DK as well. Finally, kind of coming back down to earth, but he's playing consistently over 20 minutes a night, price below 5K. Never going to be a huge play for you, but again, we're lacking value on this slate. Anything you can find below 5K is pretty useful. So I don't mind a Kongwu coming off the bench here. Not the best matchup, but hopefully it means he's on the floor when Embiid is not for the most part. If Capella's going to be matching up with Embiid, and then if Capella were to get in foul trouble, we could see even more minutes for Kongwu here. So a little bit of narrative, but he's cheap and he's been super popular. I think his ownership's down a bit. I have to double check that, but yeah, he went up only like $200 on DK, and let's see, 16%, a little higher on than I was hoping.
yeah, Kongwu is a guy I've been. If you've been watching these shows, you guys know that I have not loved this play all season, but it's been biting me in the ass every single night. That because he just is such a good fantasy points per minute guy, and so even though he doesn't really have the potential to play 30 minutes,
Right.
as long as he's under 5K, it might not matter. And like Nick said, if Capella gets into foul trouble, we don't predict foul
Yeah.
trouble, but there is a path to more minutes for him. And it's interesting that Brook Lopez is still showing up top of the DK value at 1% owned, 5,800 on DK with Giannis and Damon. Do we like that today?
Yeah, I mean, I always have a soft spot in my heart for Brook Lopez. I just really like the guy, but I don't know. He always has upside. I kind of feel the same about him as I do about Mitchell Robinson. Very high ceiling, but a pretty low floor. Probably a little bit underpriced for the ceiling, but I don't know. I don't know that I want to lock in that center spot in that first game. And again, there's no news that we're really expecting at this point. It's almost just like wishful thinking that something breaks after the slate locks at 7. So I don't know that I want to tie up that center spot. But I mean, in terms of point per dollar, this is a guy with 40-point upside. He helped me big time the other night with Giannis out. I played more Lopez than Portis, and he slightly outscored him. But that made a huge difference. But everyone's healthy now. But yeah, sub 6K, I think he's viable. It's just all of these centers kind of feel like okay in this mid range. There's a bunch. Like, I mean, we could talk about Podol, maybe Zach Collins. Um, I don't know. They're all just kind of whatever. Like, I don't mind them, but I'm also not excited to get to any of them either.
I'm also going to throw out a shout for Gogo Batadze. Same matchup in the
Great
previous
shout.
game,
Great
and
shout. Love that.
at 1%, 5% owned. I think he's worth taking some shots if we're mass multi entering today.
Hmm.
Vooch is not an easy matchup, but Goga made quick work of him in the last game. And Vooch, so Vooch was super high owned. He was chalk on the last time they played Orlando. I know it was a shorter slate, but he's pulling no ownership today in the exact same matchup. The
Yeah,
total
DeRozan's the big factor there. I think there was no DeRozan
Mhm,
last game, which created
mhm.
usage for Vooch. But I love the Goga shout. That's point per dollar, one of the better center plays in my opinion.
And then there was one more guy I wanted to mention. I mean, I've been talking about Anthony Davis. I mean, 10-1, I think it's just
He's
too cheap.
good.
I'm going to continue playing him until they raise his price. Oh, we got news. RJ Barrett's ruled out. So I don't know if the model's going to update before we get out of here.
Yeah,
But
Josh Hart.
yeah, Josh Hart's going to be I'm going to be pretty interested in Josh Hart, and that's a pretty good reason to sign up for the Occupy site so you can see the updated model after lock and after news happens, after the show anyway. You can sign up for as low as $7 a day, or $7 a week. I'm sorry. So dollar a day. If it helps you win one day out of the week, then it just pays for itself. I think it's a really good value. And any more guys we want to talk about before we build a quick dummy and get out of here?
No, let's build. I'm with it.
All right, who's the first guy in on DraftKings? I think it's going to be Jokic.
Yeah, we're both high on Jokic tonight. Let's make that our centerpiece.
So we got Jokic, top value plays. I mean, are we going to insert KCP, Tobias, Branham, Aaron Gordon?
I don't want to rush to any of them. like, I mean, I really like Dyson Daniels. He's not popping
Oh,
though.
let's put in Dyson Daniels. Is that the late game?
He might be
Uh,
shooting guard only. I don't know. I'm
I'm
trying
just
to
going to
see.
throw him in here. Just keep in mind, guys, like I always say, if you're playing the later guys, always try to have them in the guard forward utility spots. It just gives us more flexibility. If news breaks, we can swap, just more options to swap.
After that, probably Josh Hart while we have him
Let's,
fresh on our
yep.
minds.
Let's do it. Josh Hart at 5,900. Yep. I think he's great. Great matchup against Washington. Washington is the worst team in the NBA. Them are the Grizzlies anyway.
Charlotte's pretty bad too, but yeah. Let's see here. Sorting by value. Let's see what's chalk right now.
Do you want to play Aaron Gordon?
Yeah, I like Aaron Gordon. His price, did it come down? I feel like Porter. Usually Gordon's more expensive than Porter. I feel like they flipped this year. So yeah, I'm happy to go to Gordon.
Yeah, I don't know why. Even though Aaron Gordon had one down game, I feel like his price should be 7K plus.
Yeah, I agree. With Murray out, certainly. Hmm.
We need a solid shooting guard. We already have Dyson Daniels, so we're not going to throw Jordan Hawkins into this build. But I mean, Clarkson at 6,800.
Yeah, the chalk there is Sexton or Branham. I was going to see if Keontae George has shooting guard eligibility as a pivot, but he doesn't.
I can throw in Branham,
Yeah,
3,900.
Branham's fine if he starts. And again, even if that game blows out, I wouldn't be surprised if Pop let him play his last game.
And we just got an interesting piece of news. Dante DiVincenzo is starting, so this is
Whew.
two. This is like a. We could look at it one of two ways, or maybe we have to consider both sides of it. He's starting, so his minutes are probably more secure, but his usage will be lower than it would be off the bench since he's playing next to Julius and Jalen Brunson. Might cancel it out if he gets bigger minutes, but
Yeah, I think he's going to play 28 to 32 now, which even if that isn't great with the usage, I mean, he's going to be tough to get away from at his price. How much is he on DK?
he's
Oh,
47 on
47.
DK. Yeah, it's a higher, but 4K on FanDuel. He should probably be the chalk on FanDuel. Very
Yeah, I
interesting
like him on
there.
FanDuel for sure. I'm surprised. DK's been better about pricing backups up this year, I will say. FanDuel kind of has as well, but yeah, I'm not as eager to play him at 47 as I thought I'd
Oh,
be.
we got another devastating piece of news. Donovan Mitchell ruled out. Darius Garland will play.
All right, so get Garland in,
Let's
get
go ahead.
Levert in.
Yeah, so Cleveland. Let's see. Levert 6,900, Garland
I
7,200.
already liked
So
Garland at his price, honestly. I don't know if I brought it up, but 7,200 was probably too cheap for him already, and now you're getting him without Mitchell.
let's go ahead and put in Garland in there. I think him or Karis Levert, both awesome plays. And then Max Struess, he's a good option too, but I'm going to prioritize Levert and Garland. Leaves us
Yeah.
4,400 for the
Now we
last
need
two
some
positions. Yeah.
cheapies.
Let's see who's the top forward value before we get out of here.
Harris is 6'3". We already have Branham.
Who's the top cheap forward value? Ochai Agbaji. I feel like it's a thin play.
Yeah, he's got to hit threes, which he does sometimes. But I mean, Gary Trent's 47. He's not terrible. Terrence Mann's starting. I don't know if
I
I
was gonna
want to
say
go there.
Terrence. Yeah, I was gonna say we could put in Terrence Mann. Just see what that leaves us. 5K for the utility. Not super interested in any of that. I guess Eric Gordon, if we're gonna go safe with the
Yeah,
chalk.
I'm fine with that.
If we take out Terrence Mann, it's tough down here. I mean, you could go to my super cheap, probably kill my lineup play
Your boy.
Gary Harris.
Yeah, I like it.
Leaves us
If Suggs is out,
5,600.
that's a good play. And even if Suggs is in, I mean, if Harris hits a couple threes, he's at value. So
And lets us fit in Isaiah Stewart.
yeah, I
So
like Stewart.
I think this is a pretty good. This is a pretty good start for the build, though. Fill in the last two spots as you wish. You could save 300 and go to Levert instead of Garland. Maybe it opens up another combination. But let's just make sure there's no other last second news. Make sure to go watch the Discord. They're going to start in just a minute. Dean Wade is starting for Donovan Mitchell. I think this dude played 30 minutes and had 1 fantasy point last game, so it's not a spot that we're necessarily interested in for fantasy purposes, even though he's
Correct.
super cheap. Yeah, 33 minutes, 8 fantasy points.
He's the white PJ Tucker.
It's just tough. Yeah, it's going to be really tough for me to get there.
Yeah.
Any last minute thoughts, Nick?
No, I did just want to say I think Hart and DiVincenzo are probably starting. I still like Hart as a play. Even with that news, I know a lot of people are going to be rushing to Dante. But yeah, definitely get Garland. Love Garland here. He's priority for me now. But that's no surprise. His ownership's going to shoot up. So yeah, just thinking out loud as I'm processing this stuff myself. But good luck tonight, everyone. Definitely hop in the Discord if you're signed up. And if not, all the more reason to sign up.
Yep. Good luck, guys. And just real quick for the FanDuel watchers, I do think John Collins is close to a lock tonight at his price. It's incorrect. Anthony Melton's okay. Josh Hart at 5,500 and Dante Vincenzo at 4K are very solid plays. And then I'm probably just paying up for Jokic over there. So that's going to be my stud over on FanDuel. So
love it.
So appreciate you guys. Hop into Discord if you're not a member already. Instructions in the description below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel so you get notifications. We're live every day at 5:45 EST. And let's have a good day. Happy Friday.